The Saltair Pavilion, once a dazzling jewel on the shores of Utah's Great Salt Lake, stands today as a ghostly reminder of a bygone era. Built in 1893, it was a stunning sight, complete with a grand ballroom, amusement rides, luxurious amenities that attracted crowds of visitors from around the nation. But Saltair was more than just a resort. It was a crucial hub that offered a glimpse into the turn-of-the-century American pastime. Even so, despite its initial success and popularity, its story is tragic, as the resort endured numerous setbacks, including fires, financial woes, and the fluctuating levels of the Great Salt Lake, situations which repeatedly threatened its existence. So join me as we discover the rise and fall of Salt Lake's lost Saltair Pavilion. I'm your host Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. The Great Salt Lake has long captivated the imagination of those who encounter its vast saline waters. Formed during the last ice age and formerly known as Lake Bonneville, this body of water once covered a significant portion of present-day Utah, Idaho, and Nevada. However, as the climate warmed, the lake gradually receded, leaving behind the Great Salt Lake as we know it today. With that in mind, its high salinity, second only to the Dead Sea, and unique ecosystem has made it a natural wonder, drawing explorers, scientists, and eventually tourists. In the mid-19th century, Mormon pioneers settled in the Salt Lake Valley, and the lake quickly became a focal point of interest. Its buoyant waters, stunning sunsets, and serene landscape provided a unique bathing experience and picturesque escape from the harsh realities of frontier life. This is why the Great Salt Lake gained a reputation as a rejuvenating retreat, with early visitors extolling the benefits of its mineral-rich waters. With that in mind, as Utah's population grew, so did interest in developing the lake's recreational potential, and by the late 19th century, the rise of the lakeside resorts took hold. These early establishments laid the groundwork for what would become the most ambitious resort project in the Saltair Pavilion. The FIRST Saltair, completed in 1893, was jointly owned by a corporation associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Salt Lake and Los Angeles Railway. The resort was designed to attract both locals and tourists from far away, offering a convenient and luxurious getaway. Saltair's Moorish-inspired architecture with its domes and minarets stood in stark contrast to the surrounding landscape, creating an exotic allure. The centerpiece was a grand pavilion that housed a massive dance hall, one of the largest in the United States at the time, capable of accommodating thousands of guests. Saltair quickly became a cultural hub, hosting concerts, dances, and other social events. The resort also featured a variety of attractions, including amusement park rides, boating, and swimming in the lake's buoyant waters. One happy side effect of the railway's involvement was that they made the entire pavilion accessible by a dedicated line. And considering that easy access, it became a popular destination for families and young people practically overnight. However, I probably shouldn't romanticize things too much, as Saltair's history was fraught with challenges. The FIRST Saltair Pavilion met a tragic fate on April the 22nd, 1925, when a devastating fire engulfed the resort. The blaze began in the early hours of the morning, rapidly spreading through the pavilion's wooden framework. The fire's origins remain uncertain, though speculation ranges from electrical faults to arson. But nature also contributed to this disaster, as the fire was fueled by strong winds, quickly consuming the iconic architecture that had made Saltair a beloved destination. Despite efforts from local firefighters, the intensity of the fire proved overwhelming. By dawn, the once magnificent structure had been reduced to ashes and charred remains. The destruction was near total, with the grand dance hall, amusement rides, and other facilities completely obliterated. In the wake of the fire, patrons who had cherished memories of the pavilion expressed grief. Indeed, the disaster marked the end of an era, but plans for reconstruction soon began, driven by the hope of restoring the resort to its former glory. Hence, a new pavilion was built, and the resort was expanded at the same location, but by new investors. And unfortunately for them, several factors prevented the second pavilion from achieving the same success. Historians recognize the Great Depression's financial ramifications, combined with personal radios providing entertainment at home, as the reasons for poor attendance. Saltair Pavilion 2 also featured the world's largest dance floor, but it was vacant. The operators went as far as trying to adapt to the modern trends of the time to attract new customers by showing motion pictures, but considering that much better quality theaters were already available to the public and closer to home, that proposition failed. In addition, the FIRST Saltair had benefited from its location on the road from Salt Lake to Skull Valley, which in the late 1800s was home to a large community of Polynesian Mormons. However, when Saltair was rebuilt, this traffic was all but gone. Now, part of the reason for this is because the community had faded, but there was also an impact felt by automobiles and buses, which could now bypass the location of Saltair on its way to the valley. Thus, Saltair 2 had to survive against strong competition in a dwindling market. This situation was not sustainable. Disaster struck again in 1931 in the form of another fire that caused over $100,000 in damage. Then there was yet another disaster in 1933 when the resort was left high and dry with the lake's water receding. This situation forced the construction of a miniature railway to carry swimmers between the resort and the water. Things were bad, but then Saltair No. 2 closed altogether during World War II, which forced the rationing of fuel and other resources and drove many of the resort's paying customers and vital employees out of Utah. When it reopened after the war, the resort faced the same situation it had struggled with in the 1930s. Not to mention, there were now so many other entertainment options closer to home that the public was no longer in the habit of, quote, going all the way out there. And so it was. Saltair 2 closed in 1958, causing the railroad to cease passenger operations at the same time. The resort had now entered a period of abandonment and decay. Theoretically speaking, there were attempts over the next decade to reopen, but that kind of talk ended definitively in September of 1967 when arson destroyed the concourse, entry gate, concession stands, and various other support structures, leaving the main building untouched but in the middle of an apocalyptic-looking hellscape. Then, in November of 1970, another arson set fire in the center of the wooden dance floor, destroying the main Saltair Pavilion entirely. At this point, the concept of Saltair faded into the background and was almost forgotten altogether. That was the case until 1981, when it was announced that Saltair 3 would arise. The third incarnation of the Saltair Pavilion, often called Saltair 3, represents a chapter of renewal. After the site remained dormant for decades, a group of entrepreneurs and visionaries finally saw the potential of reviving the storied landmark. And so it was. Saltair 3 was constructed in the year of 1981, approximately a mile west of the original site on the south shore of the Great Salt Lake. This new version aimed to capture the spirit of its predecessor while adapting to contemporary tastes and needs. Designed with a classic blend of modern and Moorish architecture elements, the new structure includes a large concert hall, event spaces, and an expansive deck offering beautiful panoramic views of the lake. Its primary focus was to serve as a concert venue, capitalizing on the growth of the music scene, drawing crowds from Salt Lake City and beyond. The reopening of Saltair 3 was met with quick enthusiasm and high hopes. It quickly became a popular concert venue, attracting major acts and large audiences. It was even referenced in a well-known Pixie song. However, it also faced significant challenges from the start. For one, there was the fluctuating water levels of the Great Salt Lake, which could often either flood or desolate the area around the pavilion. And then there was the matter of its remote location, which still posed logistical challenges for visitors and performers. Concerts and other events have been held at the newest facility, but by the end of the 1990s, many felt that Saltair 3, like its predecessors, was just a memory. It was impractical. It was too small to compete with larger venues that were closer to the public. Well, there is occasionally activity now and then. Throughout most of the early 20th century, the third Saltair was all but abandoned. But in 2005, things changed. Several investors from the music industry pooled together to purchase the building. They are reportedly now holding regular concerts there, so hope is not lost. While it may not have perfectly recaptured that grandeur of the early 20th century heyday, Saltair III stands as a testament to the enduring allure of the Great Salt Lake and the cultural legacy of the original Saltair pavilions. In the modern day, some relics of the original pavilion occasionally reappear, reminding us of the Great Salt Lake in its prime. Until recently, the most noticeable was the skeleton of Car 502, one of the Salt Lake, Garfield, and Western's interurban rail cars that sat beside the ruins of an old powerhouse. That powerhouse once fed lights and roller coasters at the entrance to the original Saltair. The current property owner removed that rail car on February the 18th, 2012 for safety concerns. There are also rows of pilings that snake outwards towards the lake, and these are all that remain of the railway trestle and pier that once led to the earlier Saltair resort. The surviving buildings of Lake Park, one of Saltair's previous neighbors, were moved to a new site 30 miles away, where the Lagoon Amusement Park has grown around them. The Salt Lake, Garfield, and Western still exist as a standard carrier short-line railway, providing switching service in the Salt Lake City area. However, the tracks no longer reach the site of the resort itself, but you can spot where they once ran. You just have to know where to look. And that's the story of the Saltair Pavilion. But if you want more, I've posted some photos of it in the supporters area, so you can click join to check that out. Otherwise, I hope the rest of you will consider subscribing. Until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.